So welcome to the session called the 4Ds. What we are talking about here is dismissing, denying, distracting, and dead. Hang with me. We're going to get there. All right. But when it comes to what we do as men to deal with our pain, often this is what we do. We dismiss it. We deny it. And we distract ourselves from it. And when we do those things, we end up with really a form of death in our life. So we're going to kind of talk about this and what those things actually entail, because if you're not aware that that's your go-to for how you're dealing with pain, then that's the first step. You got to get some awareness around that. So gentlemen, we've talked about these a bit. So before diving in the material, what are your thoughts on it?
Look, I mean, do I do all of them? Yes. Does it start with dismiss and stay there most of the time? Yeah, totally. 100%. That's always been my go-to and I'll have people around me go, oh, well, that must really suck. I'm like, that's fine. It's fine. What I say all the time is, that's just Tuesday. I can say that on Thursday, Friday, doesn't matter. Yeah, it's not a big deal. Like, that is my knee jerk. And I think, and you guys have seen this too, but I think in some ways it's good and bad, right? It's good in as much as we don't want to catastrophize over some of this stuff and get stuck in it.
Right.
But it's bad because, like you go on to say, it takes away our ability to identify real problems then.
Yeah.
What really stands out to me most about all this is the fact that we're just simply acknowledging that men can and do experience pain. Like, that is a real thing in our life.
Wait, what?
I know.
Shocker.
Mind-boggling, right?
Unbelievable.
So for me, though, it's like you looking at this, and when we were discussing this, it's like, oh, heck, I do all these. And I do all these all the time. And so having the skill set now and the tool set to be able to move on from that. I mean, listen, in order to move on from something and move towards something, you have to identify where you're coming from and where you're going to. So if you don't acknowledge that there is real pain in your life, that you are experiencing it, it's never going to get better. So we have to start with this.
So in our master class that we were doing, we talked about, this label of toxic masculinity. Well, let me tell you what's toxic. What's toxic is to tell men that you shouldn't feel, or that your feelings, your emotions aren't as important as someone else's. That's what's toxic. Because last I checked, we're all created equal. And I mean that in the highest level thinking sense, not just constitution, but I'm talking in reality, in the universal sense. There's no gender to value. We all have value. We all have emotions, and they're valid. But it's one thing, men, for others to dismiss and to deny and to distract you from what's going on inside of you. It's something completely different for you to do that to yourself. So with that, let's jump in on the first one here, and that's on dismiss. And if you're looking at your guide, you'll see we're saying when men dismiss their pain, they're ignoring and neglecting the warning signs. See, we approach pain like it's a bad thing. No, pain is pain. It sucks. It's uncomfortable. It hurts. But pain in and of itself is neutral. It's a warning sign. It's to tell you something is wrong. And if you're ignoring the pain, you're really doing so to your own detriment, because pain is designed to be a teacher. It has a purpose. It has a catalyst. Now, when you dismiss pain, that's really the same thing as neglecting legitimate needs for your boundaries and your well-being. Your needs are legitimate, 100%. So don't dismiss that pain. And when we dismiss our pain, it's because we really don't value ourselves, and we're believing something that's not true about ourselves. We're believing lies. And one of the biggest lies as men that we believe is that we don't matter. I mean, that is something that we believe. That's been modeled, that's been taught. suck it up, buttercup, all this. And this is not to say you don't be tough. Toughness is great. That's not the same thing as dismissing. And then dismissing your pain. It's really an act of negligence. It says, I'm not important. And as I said earlier, it's one thing for someone else to do it. It's another thing for you to do it to yourself. So gentlemen, what are your thoughts on dismissing?
I mean, it's just ignoring that there's even a problem.
Yeah.
It's ignoring that, like, for lack of a better term, it's ignoring that something sucks. And I think guys do it all the time because of all the reasons you list. I can remember when I was a leader in the Army, though, what I would tell my guys all the time is there's a big difference between whining and bitching.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, like, if I have a hope for you listening to this, I hope you start bitching a lot more after this, right? Because bitching is what you do when you're acknowledging something sucks while you continue to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Whining is what you do when you sit on the sidelines and don't do it. But to not acknowledge it sucks. Think about anyone you know in life or leadership. That person's a sociopath that comes in like, this is going to be awesome. No, Rick, this is going to suck,
Yep.
man. Let's be real about it. And if we can't even be real with ourselves, there's a 0% chance of us being authentic with anyone else. And so if we dismiss that there's pain, then what's going to happen is that's going to bleed into every relationship we've got. And then we're going to feel lost and alone because no one, to include ourselves, believes there's a problem.
Yeah.
And the way I see it, it's like if you're going go-karting, right? You know how to drive. Hopefully you know how to drive. But there are people who don't know how to drive. So they have little bumpers around the car and they've got bumpers along the wall. If you're going to keep slamming into the side and you're dismissing the fact that it doesn't exist, guess what? You're not going to go anywhere. So the pain that we experience in whatever capacity it may be, it's really there as guideposts to show us this works, this does not work. If every time you walk through the door, you're walking too close to the doorway and you bash your shoulder on it, but you ignore that and you keep doing it, you're going to have a very bruised shoulder. So the more you dismiss it, pretend like it doesn't exist, the more you're going to experience that, and then the worse off you're going to be. So the first step really is, it's acknowledging like, oh, hey, this exists, this sucks, I don't like how this feels, and I need to do something about it, because otherwise I'm going to suffer, and those people around me are going to suffer.
The three of us have jokingly said this a lot, is life has two great teachers, right? Mindless repetition and blunt force trauma.
Yeah.
Yep.
If we dismiss the blunt force trauma, we're going to get stuck in a mindless repetition and still not learn our lesson.
Absolutely.
100%. And here's what you have to understand is if you're dismissing pain, your internal pain, that says you don't value yourself. Those two are always tied together. That's the key. So they go hand in hand. All right, so moving forward. When men deny their pain, they're pretending and reinforcing imposterism. Now, I'm specifically saying imposterism here, not imposter syndrome, because I want to capture that we do this every day. This is a daily habit that we have to break in our lives. And you might be, well, what's the difference between dismissing pain and denying pain? Well, here it is. It's different because dismissing is because you're the one violating yourself. Denying is you're the one violating yourself. You're being your own enemy. Denial of your pain, pretending like it's not there. Dismissing is, oh, it's not that bad. Denying is, it's not happening. You're being your own worst enemy when you do that, and you're removing your choice, the opportunity to have the choice to grow when you are denying your pain. We tell ourselves it's not that bad. When in reality, you're emotionally hemorrhaging. You're bleeding out. In the military, we call it sucking chest wounds.
Right.
Okay? That's what's going on with some of you men emotionally. You're hemorrhaging and cannot stop the bleeding. But, in the old Monty Python, it's just a flesh wound. No, it's not.
Right.
All right. And it causes us to bleed all over the other people around us. It causes us, when we do that, we're traumatizing them too with our own pain when we're denying it. It's an act of assault against yourself. because you're choosing to be your own enemy when you deny it, when you're in denial of it. And then what's the key? Well, you have to admit your pain and that you need help, support, brotherhood. One of the scariest things I ever had to do in my life was admit I needed help. I needed the brotherhood. I needed it because I wanted to do it all on my freaking own. I wanted to be strong enough. And you know what that is? That's the ego that we talked about before. That's my own freaking arrogance, my own pride, just to act like I should. You know, we talked about shoulding on ourselves, but I should do it all on my own. Bull crap. I need that brotherhood. Gentlemen, thoughts?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned ego, because like if you were going to say it, I was going to say, like, this is entirely self-centered in a really bad way. If like, oh no, like this doesn't exist, it's not happening. Well, yes, it is, and you know, as we've said, the world is out to get you. Like one way or another, shit is going to hit the fan, and things are always going to be happening. So if you already have everybody else out there trying to get you and to one up you and whatever it may be, and I'm probably one of the most positive, optimistic people you will ever meet. And so if I'm saying that, no, the world is out to get you, you don't need to add yourself to that game, because now you're having a mental battle with yourself. You're feeling this, but now you're saying, no, that doesn't exist. Like, why attack yourself? Why add your own self to the enemy's team in the game of putting yourself down? Acknowledge that it exists, because by acknowledging that it exists, again, you're realizing there is a problem, there is a pain point, but it gives us what to work off of. It allows me to move forward. Nobody wants to be in their pain. Nobody wants to sit in it. But in order to not sit in it, you need to realize that this is where we are.
And the thing I'll say is, you know, denying your pain, it is so in line with root cause stuff for what guys do. I mean, I call it the Alice complex. So if you're unfamiliar, 1953 Disney Alice in Wonderland. Towards the end of the film, she gets lost in the woods. She gets stuck on a stump. She says, sometimes I give very good advice, but I very seldom follow it. And so what happens with guys a lot of the time is we tend to shortchange what's closest to us. We devalue what's closest to us, and nothing's closer to us than our own experience. So if you go kick ass tomorrow, you can share with us, like, hey, I did this, and it's nothing. You're like, whatever. It takes us, like that last point about support and brotherhood, it takes us to celebrate it for you, because guys won't do it. It's the same with this pain. If we won't acknowledge that it even exists, and you don't have that support or brother to go, no, dude, what you're going through sucks. Yeah. Because, I mean, we've done it for each other, where we'll just flippantly say, hey, this was Tuesday. And we're like, whoa, man, Tuesday sounds like it sucked. Like, no, man. Like, you need to acknowledge that sucked.
Literally said that to me one time.
100%.
Yeah.
And so I think it is just part of, unfortunately, the nature of the beast for guys is we have a tendency to do that, because we are genetically driven to go succeed and excel. And so it sometimes just seems easier to just deny it exists. But you are going to perform more optimally if you don't deny it. And the shortcut to that, as you put on your last bullet, is to have that support, to have that brother that can pull you up and go, no, dummy, that sucks. You need to acknowledge it so you can actually work through it.
Hey, man, you're bleeding. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, also, you know, add to that is that if you are denying your own pain and you are denying your own experience, then we as men, yes, we are programmed, we are built, we are created to be the role models, to lead. But if we are denying our pain, we're also taking the power away from other men to acknowledge theirs. So by us not acknowledging the fact that I'm in pain and I'm going to do something about it, other men are going to look at us and will say, well, heck, if he's not doing anything, he's denying it, well, then therefore my pain also can't exist. So by acknowledging our pain, well, we're telling ourselves and other men and the people that we lead that, no, acknowledging pain is important, and so is moving on from it.
And to that point, you know, I don't want to shortchange guys, but we're pretty simple creatures.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If I get a high five and a steak occasionally, I'm golden, dude. Golden. And so for something like this, what's really required is we just need some alignment and some agreement. Yeah. We don't need an answer. We don't need a solution. But if I say something and you guys come in alignment with me and go, man, that sucks.
Yep.
Shit, I'm good, dude. I'm all set. That's all I require to go, fine, fair enough. And like you're saying, if I don't take the time to espouse it as a problem, then you don't have the opportunity to acknowledge it's a problem with me. Then it's giving, then it's the difference between Travis has problem X and look at him. We know it's there and it sucks, but he's still pushing forward. That's inspiring.
Absolutely.
Travis never acknowledges problem X and just goes. And that's the example. That is depressing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is next level stuff, gentlemen. I mean, this is higher level thinking. I mean, it seems real simple, but this is deep identity work here. All right. So, all right. Next thing. Now I'm gonna own it up front. This one's probably going to make some of you uncomfortable. And to that I say,
I hope it does.
Good. You need to be uncomfortable, because just like pain, getting uncomfortable can be a catalyst for you to take charge of change in your life and deal with some of that ambiguity that we were talking about previously. But distraction. When men distract from their pain, they're trying to meet healthy needs in unhealthy ways. Do you see the emphasis there on the value of your needs? Again, you have healthy needs. Your needs, what that exist, are legitimate and healthy. And we often, when pain comes into the picture, try to meet them in unhealthy ways. All right? Distraction, it's an avoidance technique. It really is. It's a skill that we men are masterful at. We are experts at distracting ourselves from pain that's going on in our lives. Why do we do it? As Travis said, we're pretty simple. It hurts. Nobody willingly wants to subject themselves to pain. I mean, I guess if you're a sadomasochist or something, but we're not.
Life doesn't have a safe word, though.
Yeah, life does not have a safe. That's good. That needs to be another masterclass. But it hurts to deal with pain, so it's easy to avoid it, but it's destructive to avoid it. It's uncomfortable, and the fear associated with being exposed and vulnerable is what makes us distract from pain. And that ego, again, comes into play because we don't want to look like we're weak. We don't want to feel and believe that lie that we're believing about ourselves is actually true, that we're weak by recognizing and admitting to someone else that there's the pain there. So we'd rather distract from it. And there's actually some science behind this in some of those go-to methods that we use to distract. And what are they? Guys, come on, you know what these are. Alcohol, drugs, all right, porn, overindulgence in whatever it might be. And that could be work, that could be toys, that could be fun, that could be, anything to distract ourselves. And notice what I didn't say was self-indulgence, because there's nothing wrong with a little self-indulgence in healthy things. It's the overindulgence. But here's the science behind it. As with, let's say you're using addictions, alcohol, drugs, to distract. You're getting a dopamine dump in your brain. You're training your neurotransmitters. You're training your neurotransmitters when you're sitting there in front of the Xbox all the time to distract yourself from the pain. You're literally telling your brain, avoid, 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 distract, distract, distract. That's reinforced. In any addiction, whatever it is that's impacting those neurotransmitters, whether it's chemical, behavioral, whatever, involves an unhealthy relationship with something unworthy of human love. Now, that's from Dr. Arthur Brooks. He's a Harvard business teacher. He actually teaches a course on happiness and leadership. But that's what distraction does. We're reinforcing those neurotransmitters because we want to avoid that, and we get hooked on the distraction, whatever it is. Gentlemen, I know you guys have some experience with this in your own world. So,
I mean, I've done full podcasts on mine. I'm completely transparent. Like, I was the alcohol guy. I poured booze on my problems for years. And what's crazy about it, and talking about how it's destructive, it's not a solution at all. And what happens is, I'll speak from my experience. It never made the problem set go away. It never made the pains that I was trying to avoid go away. If anything, it made them worse, because if you don't know this, alcohol is a depressant. And so you just kind of spin your wheels on whatever it was. The other thing is, most guys are high achievers. I'm just going to say it. Like, you've got the genes to go do. And so what happens is, you're spending your time, when you're not actively kicking the world's ass, pouring booze or porn or video games on your problem set. And then that's what your family gets. That's the version of you they get. And then you go out into the world and dominate. So you're cheating them out of the best version of you, which just compounds your problems. And then you want to pour booze or whatever it is on top of that. Here's the thing. It's not weakness to admit that you have a problem. It's not weakness to admit that something is sideways in your life. Because let's be really real for a second. We are living on a planet that is trying to kill us. From the second you're born, gravity starts pulling your ass back down. Pulls, doesn't push. It starts pulling you back down. It is effort to even stand. And so if we're spinning out of control of the cosmos on a planet designed to kill us, it's okay to go, things suck. You don't have to avoid that. And just like we don't avoid the planet and the fact that that exists, you shouldn't avoid this other stuff, because it only compounds and adds to the problem.
So I'll ask you this question, and obviously I can't hear your answer, but think about it for yourself. What do you distract yourself with? What do you feel is your thing? And if you're saying to yourself, "Oh, I don't actually have an addiction. I don't distract myself with anything," because that was the boat I was in. When in reality, my biggest addiction, my biggest distraction was myself and my own self-misery. That I would look at where I was, what I was doing, and I would get upset at myself and annoyed, and then I would just go down that rabbit hole, and that was my distraction. So I don't have time and patience or energy to deal with my kids, to be with my kids, to spend time with my wife and my kids, because I was so busy in my own world, and I was addicted to the negative thoughts and the trash talk I was giving myself. So that itself is an addiction. It's a distraction. It's a distraction from all the good things that we do have in life. It's a distraction from the fact that, heck, I have a roof over my head. I have a family. I have food. I have clothes. I have a job. What all those things that are great things. It may not be the Mustang, the Jeep. It may not be the ideal life that you envisioned when you were a kid, but it is still something. So you're distracting yourself with your own misery, and you're completely missing out on what you have right now. So even if you don't have this addiction that, again, porn, alcohol, drugs, whatever it may be, and I think most people have experienced one or all of them at some point, you have to acknowledge that there is something, and that you need to just let go of that, get away from it, and start focusing on what you do have, so that you can make more of it and create more.
I mean, gentlemen, some of the things that we distract ourselves with are food. I mean, there's sugar cravings, which, again, there's neuroscience behind it. If you develop the habit of just stuffing ho-hos and ding-dongs in your mouth. And again, not judging anybody here. We're challenging ourselves in this. Good things can be distractions. Seemingly innocuous things could be distractions that are designed to avoid pain. But in the end, when we dismiss our pain, when we deny our pain, and when we distract from our pain, we end up in this place of emotional, relational, spiritual, and unfortunately, often physical death. And the latter is a big part of the reason why we're here, because of those men that we knew several months ago in our respective worlds who killed themselves, who took their lives. And we don't want that for you. So we're here to bring life to those dead places for you and with you, to call men out by name, which represents identity, and to call men up into life, the life they've always wanted. That's what this is about. So if you find dismissal of pain in your life, ask yourself, why am I dismissing this? I guarantee you it's associated with how you value yourself. If you're denying it, I'm sure it's because you're telling yourself it's really not a big deal. It is a big deal. And if you're distracting, it's because you're trying to deal with the pain, but you're doing it in unhealthy ways. This is what we do. This is a human problem. This is a problem with all men. But those things, those three, bringing you to a place you don't want to be in. It brings you to a place of further pain, and it only makes it worse. So we want to confront these things head on, challenge ourselves, grow in these areas, and be who we are designed to be. So, closing thoughts from my two esteemed colleagues.
So the last thing I'll say is this, like everything else that we're going to be covering throughout the content, is a skill. And in all three pieces of this, dismiss, deny, distract, there's going to be some skills that are required to stay proficient. Here's the thing, spoiler alert, this isn't a one and done thing. There's not going to be one scenario in your life that one of these three things is going to come into play. It's going to happen again and again and again. And so the skill becomes that first thing we discussed, is being able to identify there's pain, identify if you're distracting, right? So, I'll tell you straight up, like my distractor now is work. Because in my business, I can work all day. Content creation doesn't have to sleep, and neither do I. And so it's not the same pain points that I used to have, but now if there's a conflict in the house or a fight I want to avoid or a hard conversation I want to have, oh, no, I got to go work, right?
Yeah.
And being able to identify, okay, that's my new distractor. And so you've got to take a critical look at yourself. You've got to do some internal work and figure out, okay, what am I doing now? Because something, just like any other habit, right? Something's going to take its place, good or bad. And you have to be able to identify what it is. And even if you can qualify an ROI for your new distraction, doesn't mean it's not still a distraction that's keeping you avoiding getting through the painful thing, whether it's a conversation, a memory, a life change that needs to happen. So stay on top of these skills because that's what they are.
And at the end of the day, I mean, we're here, as we've all mentioned at this point, we're here because we had people in our lives that took their lives because of what was going on. And, you might be telling yourself, well, I would never let it get that far. I would never do that. I guarantee you, my friend that took his life told himself that on a daily basis. I would never do that. And I know that because he was doing all the right things. He was seeing the professionals. He had the support system. At the end of the day, he did take his life. You don't have to go that far to be dead. You can be a living zombie because you're so involved in your pain, because you're dismissing it, you're denying it, you're not dealing with it. So, I probably shouldn't say this, but it's almost better to be physically dead than a living dead. So you have right now, you still have your life in front of you. You now have the skills and the tools, and you're going to continue to get them to take your life to the next level. Don't let it get to that last of the 40s. Don't let it get to the point where you're living dead, that someone looks at you and says, what is going on? Take the time now, take the initiative to do something about it. Make a difference in your life. Create something different with your life, because you can do it. You're able to. There's no question about it. You just have to do it.
And I'll close with this. If you find yourself in that place of death in your life, let me just put it that way, start there. Yeah. Own it. Own that. Don't dismiss that. Don't deny that's where you are. Don't distract from that. What have we already talked about? Brotherhood, reaching out, owning it. We know it hurt. We know the pain. All right? Start there. That's what the Alpha Initiative is about. Just start.